My name is Fran, and I've been married for a little over a year. I've worked hard to gain my mother-in-law's approval, but it seems all my efforts were wasted. The reason is simple. One day, she came up to me and said something shocking. I'm returning you to your parents. I was stunned, but before I knew it, my mother-in-law was driving me to my parents' house. Luckily, my parents live close by, only a few minutes away by car. When we arrived, my mother-in-law shouted out of the car, "Hey, come on out." Inside, I heard a thump as my dad quickly came to the door. "How can I help you?" he asked politely, with a smile. "I'm sorry," my mother-in-law replied, "but I need to talk to you." My dad invited her inside, but she refused, saying, "We can talk here. I'm only here to give your useless daughter back." Useless daughter? My dad's face turned serious as he looked at her, clearly upset. "What do you mean by useless?" he asked. "Exactly what I said," my mother-in-law snapped. "Your daughter makes only $5,500 a month. She's not helpful around the house, a defective wife." My dad's face darkened, and I feared he might lose his temper, but my mother-in-law didn't seem to notice and kept insulting me as if nothing was wrong. "She's useless around the house and barely makes any money. We're returning her to you," she said. Just then, my mom stepped outside, curious about the noise. My mother-in-law ignored her, saying only to my dad, "I'm returning her, so it's your responsibility to take her back." My dad looked at my mom, and they exchanged a silent look. Then he turned to my in-laws and said, "Fine, if you're returning her, we'll take responsibility." "That's right," my mother-in-law declared, "take responsibility." "Well, that means closing the company," my dad said calmly. My mother-in-law's eyes went wide. "Wait, what? Closing what company?" "The family business," my dad said firmly. "Since you're making us take responsibility for our daughter, we'll handle things our way." I watched my dad, knowing how serious he was. When he made a promise, he always followed through, no matter how hard it was. I knew he'd keep his word, especially when it came to me, because he's always been devoted to me. His devotion started in my childhood. I was very weak and sickly, getting fevers and needing to stay in bed often. Sometimes, I'd be too sick to go to school for weeks, so my mom would stay by my side, and my dad would be too worried to work. This happened often, and I think it made my parents even more protective of me. Even though I was frail, my parents did their best to make me happy. They filled my room with books, video games, and other things to keep me occupied. My older brother was even a bit jealous of all the attention and gifts I got. I was the only one in the family who got so many things to keep me entertained. My favorite was my dad's old laptop, which he used for work. Since it was second-hand, it might not have been the best for a regular user, but as an elementary school kid, it was perfect. I could draw, play games, and even go online to explore the world. Spending most of my time in bed, the computer opened up a whole new world to me. There was so much out there that I'd never seen before. I thought, maybe I can make my own world here. It's a memory that still makes me smile. That's how my interest in computers began. At first, I just drew simple pictures, but soon I got into computer graphics and was fascinated by 3D designs. I kept learning and improving my skills until I eventually became a graphic designer. Even though I was physically weak, I realized that I could do this kind of work from home. After high school, I started working as a graphic designer from my bedroom, but at first, it was tough. I was self-taught, had no specialized training, and didn't know how to find clients. My health made it hard to work a regular job, so I had to take on projects that I could handle at my own pace. I spent countless hours researching online, putting in effort day after day. Over time, people began to notice my work. Some clients would return or introduce me to new clients, and my work gradually started feeling like a real job. 5 years passed, and as my work became more popular, I felt a huge sense of relief. Around that time, my dad came to me with a proposal. "Would you like to create an ad for a construction company?" The offer surprised me. My dad owns a small construction company that used to focus on building new houses, but now mainly handles home remodeling. The company is small, just my dad, mom, and brother, but it's well known in the neighborhood. "Are you sure you want me to do it? Will I get paid?" I asked. "I'm not asking just because you're my daughter. I believe you have a great eye for advertising," he said. I felt proud to be recognized for my design skills, but more than that, I felt truly accepted. I created an ad that was printed in the local newspaper, and I also built a simple website for the company and posted the ad there. We weren't known outside the area, but locals started noticing. Some would even say, "I saw your ad. It's really nice." Hearing that made me so happy. Later, the ad was turned into a poster, which was displayed at the company's entrance and on bulletin boards maintained by the local community association. I felt proud and thrilled that I could finally support myself and live independently. My posters had become popular in the community, and people began talking about me. Did you know the daughter of the construction company is a designer? She even makes ads for her family's business. These kinds of comments spread, and before long, locals started asking for my help. One day, an electrician from town approached my dad and asked if I could create an ad for his business. My dad said with a smile, "I'll ask Fran." This electrician was actually one of my dad's clients. His company handled everything from air conditioner installations to fiber optic lines and wiring. We often worked together on remodeling projects, so I was happy to help. I designed the ad and asked my dad to deliver it when it was ready. The electrician loved it and was so pleased that he even came to our house to thank me with a small, sweetly wrapped gift. But it wasn't the electrician I was used to, it was his son, Clark, who had come. He introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Clark, my father's the electrician." Clark had recently graduated from college and was helping his dad with the family business. "So, are you planning to become an electrician too?" I asked him one day, curious about his plans for the future. He chuckled and nodded. "Yeah, I think so. I'll probably take over the family business one day," he said, looking at me with a warm smile. "Guess that means we'll be seeing a lot of each other." His eyes held a hint of something more, and before I knew it, I was blushing. Then he added, "Not that I'd mind. I think you're pretty amazing." No one had ever said anything like that to me before, and I was both flustered and thrilled. We exchanged phone numbers, but this time, it was for us, not for any business. That night, I was so nervous and excited that I barely slept. After that, Clark and I started talking every day. We shared our routines, funny stories, and dreams, and those conversations quickly became my favorite part of each day. We soon started dating, though it wasn't always easy, since I often wasn't well enough to go far. Our dates were simple, short walks to the nearby park when I felt up to it, where we'd chat and laugh together. We didn't get to do the typical things, like going to a movie or having a long night out, and with Clark's busy schedule as an electrician, our plans were always subject to his work hours, especially during the peak seasons of summer and winter. But we made it work, staying close through our texts and calls, and our bond deepened with time. Eventually, we decided to get married, and a few years later, I moved in with Clark and his family. In the beginning, it felt like everything was falling into place. Clark's parents seemed understanding. My mother-in-law told me, "Just do what housework you can handle," and my father-in-law was considerate, only asking me for small favors when I had time. I truly thought we were going to have a warm, cooperative life together. But gradually, things shifted. One day, my mother-in-law asked, "Can you watch the store for me while I'm away?" I explained that I had my own work, but she insisted, "Just bring your laptop, you can work from the counter." Wanting to be helpful, I agreed, even though it took away time from my job. Soon, my father-in-law was asking if I could design a website for the store. "I'm not a professional," I said, but he assured me I'd be fine, so I took on that project, too, even though web design wasn't my strength. As weeks went by, the requests kept coming. My mother-in-law began expecting me to handle all the cleaning, cooking, and laundry. Running the store also became a regular part of my day. With each new responsibility, my graphic design work suffered, and my income dwindled. But since Clark was covering our expenses, I tried not to let it bother me. Even so, the stress wore me down. I was constantly exhausted and even started getting sick. One day, when I was too weak to get out of bed, I told my mother-in-law I needed a break. She looked at me and scoffed. "A fever? Just over this?" But she then sighed and told me to rest. I worried I might have offended her by refusing to work. Later, when Clark came to check on me, I explained everything, hoping he'd understand. He looked at me and said, "Why don't you just say no if it's too much?" I was stunned. "They're my in-laws, Clark. I can't just refuse," I explained, worried they'd resent me or even suggest a divorce if I did. But he only said, "You're an adult, you have to stand up for yourself," leaving me feeling even more alone. When I recovered, I continued doing as my in-laws asked, hoping my efforts would eventually earn their approval. One day, my mother-in-law suddenly asked, "Fran, how's your work going?" Thinking she was just making conversation, I told her I was still managing, though at a slower pace. She then asked, "How much are you making right now?" I felt uncomfortable. Wasn't that a private question? but she explained, with prices going up, it'd help if you could contribute a bit to household expenses. I was shocked, as their business seemed to be thriving, but not wanting to cause trouble. I hesitantly said, I'm only making around $500 a month since I'm handling most of the housework. Her face flushed with anger. Only $500? And you're hardly doing any housework, she said sharply. I felt hurt and tried to explain that I did most of the cooking, cleaning, laundry, and managed the store. She ignored me and went to get my father-in-law. Minutes later, they both returned and announced they'd be returning me to my parents. I was stunned as they drove me to my parents' home and told my father they were sending me back. My father listened and then calmly replied, Fine, if that's what you want, I'll close my construction company. My in-laws tried to argue, but my father wouldn't back down. Frustrated, they finally left, calling me a useless wife and saying I wasn't welcome back. Heartbroken, I looked to my father, who gently said, Maybe it's time to consider a fresh start, Fran. Days passed, and I still hoped Clark might come for me, but all I received was a single message, let's get divorced. Shocked, I tried reaching out, but he never replied. His lawyer handled the rest, and I reluctantly agreed to the divorce terms. In less than a year, my marriage was over. Following this, my father closed his construction company as he had promised. Thankfully, my brother stepped in, reopening it under a new name and cutting ties with Clark's family. Rumors about my in-laws' treatment of me started circulating, and clients gradually drifted away from their business, choosing instead to work with the electricians partnered with my brother. Clark's family began to struggle as their reputation faltered, and soon they were losing clients altogether. My family and I saw it as justice for how they'd treated me. Then, one summer day, something unexpected happened. We received a call from a client, the air conditioner seems broken. My brother went to inspect it, only to find that someone had deliberately damaged the unit. He reported it to the police and replaced the unit, but soon, other clients experienced similar issues. Eventually, my brother provided clients with video intercoms to monitor the situation. Within days, footage captured the culprits, Clark's parents, who confessed to sabotaging the air conditioners in order to create more work for their business. Their actions backfired, leading to their arrest and the collapse of their business. Today, I'm focused on my own life. I work as a graphic designer and help at my brother's store, free from any in-laws' demands. My father, who retired, often checks on me with a concerned, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" His support, though constant, is a reminder of how loved I am. I playfully suggested he help at the store if he was so concerned, and to my surprise, he agreed. Now, my father and I work alongside my brother, building a new chapter for our family. We've been through so much, but in the end, I'm surrounded by people who truly care for me, and for that, I'm grateful.